So taking a second to go to the land down under, a little bit of a palate cleanse. Australia had an election, and CBC News says Anthony Albanese, or is it Albanese, as they say, riding anti-Trump wave, claims victory for Labour Party in Australia. Opposition leader Peter Dutton loses seat, accepts full responsibility for party's defeat. Wow, there's a first. Don't people realize that when you're a party leader, you don't do that? You don't self-reflect. Come on. Haven't those memoirs taught you anything? You don't self-reflect. You point the finger and blame somebody else or countries or half the country, call them deplorables. You know what I mean? So what happened in the land down under? Australia's Anthony Albanese claimed a second term as prime minister on Saturday in a dramatic comeback against once resurgent conservatives that was powered by voters' concerns about the influence of U.S. President Donald Trump. Sounds familiar. The Australian Electoral Commission website projected Labor would win 81 to 150 seats in the House of Representatives, increasing its majority in Parliament, with 68% of the vote counted. Peter Dutton, leader of the Conservative Liberal Party, that just clarified. So in Australia, they don't actually have a Conservative Party like we do. They have Labour Party, which is kind of your left-wing party, and the Liberal National Party, I think it's called. That's your Conservative Party. It's very weird sounding, but it is Aussie after all. There's some weird stuff going down there. Not to diss any Australians. I really admire your country. I like your style. I'm not trying to diss the country. I'm just saying that people that go and visit there, they're quite amazed with things. So Conservative Liberal Party conceded defeat and the loss of their own seat, echoing the fate of Canada's Conservative Party and its leader Pierre Poilievre, whose election losses days earlier were also attributed to a Trump backlash. Supporters of Labor's election celebration in Sydney cheered and hugged at each other as Albanese claimed victory and said his party would form a majority government. Our government will choose the Australian way, because we are proud of who we are and all that we have built together in this country, he told supporters. We do not need to beg or borrow or copy from anywhere else. We do not seek our inspiration from overseas. We will find it right here in our values and our people. Albanese would be the first Australian Prime Minister to win a consecutive term in 2 decades. He said Australians have voted for fairness and the strength to show courage and adversary and kindness to those in need. Canada's recent elected Prime Minister Mark Carney congratulated Albanese on social media, saying that in an increasingly divided world, Canada and Australia are close partners and the most reliable of friends. We have the opportunity to build on the relationship and our shared values to the benefit of both our nations, and I look forward to it, Carney's social media post said. Dutton, whose Liberals have been leading in the opinion polls as recently as February until it became dodged with comparisons to Trump, said he had phoned Albanese to congratulate him. Crikey! It sounds like they copied from those mates in Canada. It almost sounds like we got some manufactured. Like the election was some sort of staged event. We did not do well during this campaign event. That much is obvious tonight. I accept full responsibility for that, Dunn said in his televised speech. The former police officer with a reputation for being tough on crime and immigration said he had spoken to Labor's candidate in the seat of Dickinson and that he had held for 2 decades and congratulated her on her success. We have been defined by our opponents in this election, which is not the true story of who we are, Dunn said, promising the party would rebuild. Cost of living pressures and concerns about Trump's volatile policies have been among the top issues on voters' minds, opinions polls showed. If you sling enough mud, it will stick, said the Liberal senator from the Northern Territory, Jacina Price, whose comments that her party would make Australia great again had fueled comparisons to Trump's own Make America Great Again slogan. You made it all about Trump, she said on ABC. You're gonna do the Australian story. You gotta do those hence vowels. The ABC. Dunn had said he would point Price to Ministry of Government Efficiency, one of several echoes of Trump policies. Opposition Liberal Party spokesperson Senator James Patterson defended the Conservative campaign, which he said was negatively affected by the Trump factor. It was devastating in Canada for the Conservatives. I think it has been a factor here. Just how a big factor will be determined in few hours' time, he later told IBC. So here's how insanely similar the Australian election was and compared to our recent election here in Canada. And this is where people are noticing there's a trend going. So Market Mania got this screen graph from Polymarket. Says, wow, it's almost like these elections are scripted. Now Australia is lining up to follow the same globalist clown playbook. Same corrupted rot, same economic decay, just a different accent. Rest in peace, Australia. You're next on the chopping block. And you can see there's on the red line there's the Labour Party. On the blue line, that's the Liberal Conservative Party. And you can see they were topping the charts, just like Pierre Poilievre, just like our markets. You can see the comparison. Look at this. Who will be the next Prime Minister of Canada after election? Australian parliamentary election winner. Almost neck and neck similarity. The exact same. Isn't that something? Isn't that something? So this is where people are starting to note that something's up, that this Trump effect is being used to manipulate people. That's not just all Donald Trump's rhetoric. That's fear-mongering people to vote for the lefty party. The lefty party that's also in bed with corporations, that's also in bed with corruption, that's also in bed with the worst of the worst, and reckoning the sovereignty of Australians and Canadians and all different countries. So people are starting to notice this. People are starting to notice this, that this trend of somehow the more conservative party that was top of the charts talking about cost of living, talking about unaffordability, talking about domestic issues in their countries, all of a sudden they get told or they get suggested to turn a 180, focus on Trump. They lose the election to the already incumbent Liberal Party, or in this case, the Labour Party, and they take control. They take control. They take the opportunity to market towards people on that rhetoric to scare them into the polls to vote for this. Very eerily similar. It's creepy, disturbing. So, Clown Down Under says Prime Minister Anthony Albanese speaking in Canberra after landslide election victory. Albanese said, "If we get this decade right, we can set Australia up for the many decades ahead." So, it's eerily, it's scary. It's very eerie, this speech that he's about to give to the Australian people. And it almost sounds like this is the startup, this is the teeing up of what we're seeing with Mark Carney, what we're seeing with Keir Starmer, what we're seeing with a lot of these people that just seem to come out of nowhere that we later learn are attached to the WEF, they're attached to the NGOs, they're attached to George Soros and company. Now investing into running a campaign in these countries, they mysteriously get elected through some shenanigans, through some trickeries, through some campaign slogans. And now he's about to tee up what's going to happen in Australia. Listen to this.
You ready? Someone was paying attention. It is great to have the honour of being back in the Prime Minister's courtyard, and I do want to thank the Australian people for the very clear mandate that they've given my government. Today, we continue the work of continuing to build Australia's future. I promise to be a Prime Minister for all Australians, those who voted Labor, those who didn't, and hope to earn the trust of the Australian people on an ongoing basis. We are deeply humbled by the result on Saturday, and we don't take a second of it for granted. The hard work will continue today. My government has been an orderly government. We have worked hard. We've had effective ministers, but also an effective caucus. And we've engaged in a way that's clear, that's forward-looking, that made not just a case that we had been a good government in getting inflation down, wages up, interest rates starting to fall, employment growing. We also had an effective offer going forward as well that resonated with people, that we developed in consultation with people. I said before the last election that you needed more than one term as a Labor government, and I saw it from that first day, indeed, I became a Labor leader back in 2019. I want Labor to be the natural party of government. I think that given who we are, representing working people, but also effectively engaging with business and engaging with civil society, that we can make what is the best country on earth even better in the future. I am genuinely so optimistic that if we get this decade right, we can set Australia up for the many decades ahead.
Yep. If we get that Labour Party, that second term, crikey. We get the Labour Party a second term, it's going to make decades incredible and decades to come. Yeah, it sounds very, very suspiciously WEF term of phrase wordplay there that he is addressing now to Australians. And very similar to what happened in Canada, very similar to what's happening in the UK, very similar to a lot of different areas that all of a sudden, I don't know what it is that the party that was leading the polls that were kind of the complete polar opposite of this globalization, that people like Pierre Poilievre, when they were focusing on domestic policies, championing a lot of the Canadian frustration of what this country has turned into. He was kind of vocal on that, and then all of a sudden, he gets some sort of insider note to, oh, I'm gonna get away from that to push the Trump narrative that has already been used by the Liberal Party, that's already been used by lefty parties to squash dissent, to try to foment discord. And Trump did, inevitably play a factor into a lot of these elections, trying to use the rhetoric and push for politicians to then eat that up and use that as a marketing brand. But in the end, Trump, Mark Carney, and Anthony Albanese in Australia, they're all using it to their own advantage. They're all using it to the advantage of this one global tyrant agenda to get these people elected into office, to squash the dissent of populism, whether it be in Canada or Australia or wherever the case may be, and move forward with this heinous agenda. Now, I don't know exactly what this guy's intentions are, but we know with Mark Carney that his intentions are very clear, that he wrote in paper, set in stone through his publications, the book Values, that he's turning Canada into an asset for the WF. He wants digital currency. He wants mandates on people. He wants to restrict people's rights and freedom of speech and freedom of assembly and Charter of Rights and Freedoms here in Canada. So it could be very similar to what's happening in Australia, and they just blindside you again with this. And after we saw our election unfolding and word is getting out on that, now it's happening in Australia, very eerily similar. things are starting to get more suspicious. People are starting to get more aware of this. They're starting to raise their eyebrows. They're trying to scratch their heads and saying this can't be all just magically on Trump. That this is some sort of manufactured effort. So, Sky News Australia, this is the guy that lost, Dutton. Dunn's election night humiliated is due in no small part to the millions of female voters who he let down with a campaign rooted more in MAGA ideology than cost of living solutions, writes Louise Roberts. So again, just like Pierre Poilievre, he got away from domestic issues like cost of living, housing, affordability, the economy, and took up the Trump rhetoric, the mega culture, and pushed the ideologue to be this fighting force against Donald Trump. And he lost a lot of his base because a lot of his base were more focused on the domestic policies more than they were focused on Trump. And when he did that, he completely disconnected with the constituents that supported him throughout this time. And I'm sure that was the similar case to this guy, Peter Dutton, in Australia. So the Walk says Canada and Australia both lost federal elections this week to the WF globalists. They cheated their way like they did in America in 2020. We will wake up like America did and defeat these satanic bastards next time for good. That's what this guy's saying. So then, now that we had 2 elections happen, they asked Donald Trump about this because they're calling this the Trump effect, that all this rhetoric about trade, all this pressure that Donald Trump put on Canada, the pressure they put on Australia, forced people to vote for Labour Party, forced people to vote for the Liberal Party. And they asked Donald Trump about this. This is 7 News Australia. They asked Donald Trump about this, and here's what he had to say about the recent Australian election.
The Australian election, Conservatives did very badly, just like in Canada. They're saying it's the Trump effect again. Conservatives doing it. In Australia, there was an election this weekend.
Well, I don't know. Albanese, I'm very friendly with. I don't know anything about the election other than
He just won again. He was re-elected.
the man that won he's very good. He's a friend of
Your
mine.
tariffs were not the act of a friend. Will you be speaking to him now, congratulating him on his win?
Well, I can only say that he's been very, very nice to me, very respectful to me. I have no idea who the other person is that ran against him. And, we've had a very good relationship.
Just like Canadians, you thought you were going to vote for a guy that was going to stand up to Trump, fueling up your ever so present rage against this guy, to then realize that they were actually friends all along. You got a friend in me. That's what we saw. That's what we hear now with in Australia's election. And Trump saying that I have no idea, but he's a good friend of mine. So now Australia kind of feels the position that we here in Canada are feeling. That you kind of got a bit betrayed. You got duped. You got suckered in. You thought that there was going to be some monumental change that triumphs over Donald Trump because that was what the rhetoric was telling you and repeating constantly on mainstream outlets, that the politicians are using it to their advantage. They got you to the voting booths to campaign on your fear-mongering. And now here you are. So I hope for Australia for the best, because I do like you guys. I do like you guys. And I like the country, but it's very eerily similar to what happened here and for what Canadians are going to be dealing with in the short time coming. I hope that doesn't happen in Australia. And if it does happen in Australia, my advice, the same I say with my fellow Canadians here, is to get together, unite on a common front, and try to change it through grassroots action, through positive, peaceful demonstrations, because electorally, we know that's all corrupted. That picking the best candidate, hoping for the best leader to follow on his principle, to follow on his campaign. We know that has been compromised and taken over. So get on the streets, make your voice heard, make sure that whoever's in charge sticks to their guns and actually fights for their country and their constituents and not serving to the needs of higher donors outside their country and special interests like the WEF.